Yo. Yo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you're coming from. Hope y'all are doing well. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another chill office hours. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a good weekend so far. Hey, turn up. What's going on, everybody? Bangers only, exactly. All right. If you're new around these parts, on Sundays we do office hours. So it is your chance to ask any questions that you might have. We're using a platform called Slido. So you can always do !ask here in chat. That'll give you access to the Slido for today. Otherwise, it's slido.com. And our number for today is 269-935. As always, that number will be in the follow along materials channel and the going live channel on Discord. So no need to ever stress about grabbing it once we're live. Because it'll already be in those channels for you. The other thing about that is that you can upvote things. So I go through the most upvoted questions, meaning that if people like that question, upvote it, and that's the one that's most likely to be answered. I do like to mix in a few kind of newer questions because I know some people can't, like if you ask a question like too late in, it's not going to be upvoted as much. I will try and answer a few that are newer, and then I always like to try and answer some that are coming through in chat as well. So Indifferent goes, hey, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. So welcome. Let's get in. It's chill. We're going to take our time. We're going to look through some homework together. Then we're going to answer your questions for the rest of the time today. I'm just starting the cohort now. Should I catch up or wait for the next one? Who knows if there'll be a next one. So definitely catch up and join us. Yeah, there's no check-in for office hours. Since office hours are optional and you don't need attendance, yeah. No check-in. What's going on, everybody? All right, so get your questions in on Slido. We're going to start working through them. I do want to spend some time on the homework, so maybe we'll do a few questions first, and then we'll do some of the homework. Yeah. Got to get those channel points for OnlyFans. Code Pharaoh, welcome joining us live. Glad you found us. Catching up has been super hard, but thank you for allowing us to do so. Hey, yeah, you put in the work. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Struggling to get through the reading. Any advice? Just get through it, right? And so remember, you should be going as deep as your time allows, right? Some folks are going to have 5 hours a day to go through it. Some folks are going to have 1. Are you being optimal with your time? Are you doing your active recall? Are you doing your spaced repetition? And are you moving through the material in a way that makes sense? If you're doing those things, you're good. Don't just be reading material and be like, Leon, it's not making sense. Well, did you active recall? Have you added it to your spaced repetition? Because if the answer is no, then you don't get any qualms about reading not making sense. But remember, it's also first pass. All the really important stuff we're going to recover in class. And so all the core stuff that you really, really need to know will be in class. It'll be in our slides and we'll go over it again. Do you put office hours on YouTube? No, I don't. But they are all immediately available as VODs here on Twitch. Are those your cats in the background? No, they're not. I found reading and using the Pomodoro technique works really well together. Yeah. For me, I have to use Pomodoro. For everything, I have to use Pomodoro. If I just go in and try to read a book, what'll eventually happen will be that I'll get through a chapter and it's like I teleported. I won't remember a thing. Nothing will like be in my mind. It's as though I turned a page and then like a half an hour later, I'm at the end of the chapter and like it just glazed over. And so for me, I need that Pomodoro to like focus me so that I know that I have to be intentional with that time. And I know when I'm going to get that break. and then I have to active recall like every couple of paragraphs. If I don't active recall every couple of paragraphs, then yeah, it just glaze over and I don't understand it. Yeah. Hey, glad they found us, Ming. Yeah. The Pomodoro is how I got through the Shea House stuff. Yeah, I mean it's kind of a big help. Uh got any snacks? No snacks today. I don't like to normally eat on stream. I find it kind of awkward. Or not awkward. I just find it not. It's hard for me to keep talking the whole time if I'm like putting food in my mouth. Yeah. What's on the menu for hydration? We got some nice cold brew. Nice cold brew. Going pretty good. How do you keep up with all the students you have? Well, it's not just me. We got a merry bunch of moderators that help out. We have a lot of alumni that help out. We have a lot of folks that are going through the cohort that help out. So it's not just me. It's the whole community that helps folks get through it. How many points for a mukbang stream? Yeah, no, I don't think that'll happen. Feels like Anki and active recall slows me down. Any suggestions? Yeah, it should slow you down. Things that are high cognitive effort are gonna slow you down, and so you got to put in that high cognitive effort though if you want this for the long term, right? And so yeah, active recall and Anki will slow you down for sure. You still have the 100 hours project. Should we start that already? No way. We're nowhere near starting our 100 hours project yet. And as all things in due time, we're gonna move through course together. We're going to get to that together. We're going to have lots of classes on what it is, how to do it, how to construct the things that make the most sense. And so just not something you need to worry about right now. Yeah. Did you ever want to work for FANG companies? Not really. I like companies that pay me well, have good work-life balance. And yeah, that's that kind of all I look for. I don't need more than that. Can we get a breakdown of how channel points are given? You can click on the little Leon emote next to the chat, and when you do that, it'll tell you all the different ways you can get channel points, and I also believe it'll tell you how you can accumulate them. It's not a my control thing, it's a Twitch thing. Jason Derulo, hey, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. A lot of gifted subs already today. Thank you, everybody. Jason Derulo. Such a great name. It's one of my favorite names. Do we know when groups will be assigned? Well, the forum is still taking folks until Tuesday. So the forum is open until Tuesday, and then we'll start putting people into groups after that. Yep, all the classes get recorded and put up onto YouTube. Office hours we don't put on YouTube though. A little bit of an incentive to show up. Are these groups going to replace the houses? No, just give you another space to kind of hang out. All right, let's go ahead, and the forums are always in the follow along materials channel. Anything I ever asked you to do is in the follow along materials channel. Will you show us how to format on how to include this program on a resume? Yeah, we're just not there yet though. We're gonna have full classes on how to structure your resume, how to structure your online presence, how to do all that stuff. And so we're just not there yet. Take some time, ease into program, focus on the code for right now. We'll get you there by the end though. Don't worry. Can you clarify on how to use the MDN? I just Google. And it sounds cheeky, but I do. I just Google the thing I want to know and then put the MDN at the end of it. So I want to know, if I want to know how to, like find something that's italicized, I would say like italicized text, CSS, MDN, and then it'll always pop up for me. How do you learn to be patient? I don't know. I think it's something that I know I think I am patient to an extent. But it really does come down to that idea we talked a lot about, managing frustration. It's something that I'm very intentional about because I know that is the biggest deterrent for me wanting to learn long term. And so I work a lot on managing my frustration. I work a lot on meditation. I work a lot on centering the things that I think I value in that moment. And so it's definitely a process. Yeah, definitely a process. Do we find an internship somewhere before we look for a job? No. Yeah, it looks like most people already have experience with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's why they're asking for more. How can starters deal with this? I wouldn't say that's actually a stretch. I feel like most people have not touched code before joining 100 devs. The ones that have touched it though are going to be a little bit more vocal, and so just ignore them for now. You don't have to worry about pushing yourself. Go at the speed of class. Yeah, and one of the things you have to really learn early on is not to compare yourself or your code to others as you go through this process of learning, because there will always be somebody that knows more than you. There's always someone that wrote the language, right? And that person will always know more than you. And I think if you came to the alumni Twitter space on Friday, I think that's something that they brought up. I think both two of the alumni brought up this idea of, as you're going through the program, you just got to learn to not compare yourself to others. It's just a fool's errand. It does nothing for you. It doesn't help you in any way, and you have no idea if they put 100 hours into something or if they put 5 minutes into something, right? You just never know how much they struggle to get that thing done, and then you're just comparing their highlights to your lows, you know? And so it just has no bearing on your ability to make it through. Yeah, one of the alumni had never touched code before the cohort. Exactly. Been coding for half a decade. I know nothing. I feel the same way. I just want to know if you say water like I do, a fellow Philly kid. I do say water, but I've been out of Philly so long that sometimes I don't say it. There are certain things that I'll always say water though. I'll say like water ice. Like I'll never say water ice. Like that'll never happen. But yeah. The word's still there. Are you a gray with an E or an A? I am an E person, and I have no idea where that comes from. I have no idea where it comes from. I always type it with an E and then correct it. Weird. Yep, they're called hoagies, not subs. Do you need an assistant? No, I'm good for now. All right, let's look at some of these top questions real quick, and then we're going to take a look at some of the homeworks. Do you miss Wawa? Yeah, I miss Wawa. All right, first question is, what is make 15 minutes of pain responsive that is due Thursday? So that means take the 15 minutes of pain, that layout that we did, and make it responsive. Make it look good across devices, right? Make it have media queries, right? Make it have media queries so that as you make the screen smaller, it does stuff. Now, it's a very, very simple layout. And so the media queries won't be that intense, but a media query or two that as the screen gets smaller, it does something like that it responds, you know? That's it. Nothing more intense than that. Just use a few media queries to change the layout as the screen size gets smaller. Can you explain the before and after pseudo elements? Any pseudo elements in general? I can't wrap my head around it. So pseudo elements are elements that give your selectors a little bit more oomph. Some of them are very easy to understand and some of them are a little bit more difficult to understand. So the one that I think that's really easy to understand is pseudo selector first letter. And so if I was to do, let me open up some code here. Let's see. I'm going to go to Little Leon in a second. One second here. All right. All right, so here's the about page that I asked y'all to do. And if we were to open this in the browser, here's the about page. It's a big screen, so that's why it's not gonna look the same as the photo at the moment. But we have this paragraph here that starts off with the lorem ipsum, and there are some pseudo selectors we can use. So if we go to CSS and we do paragraph, let's go down here. Let's do paragraph first letter, and we can do font size. Let's do 30 pixels, right? So we have the paragraph, and then after these colons is what we call a pseudo selector. It's like giving your selectors a little bit more oomph, right? And so if we go back and we refresh, you're gonna notice, and I know it's a little small, let me just a little bit bigger here. You're gonna notice that the first, like the L's, the first letters are now those 30 pixels, right? They're bigger now, right? Those L's are bigger now. And so that pseudo selector enabled us to grab that first letter and only that first letter and make it bigger, right? And so there are a whole bunch of pseudo selectors, and they have the specificity equivalent of like a class. So they do add some specificity here, but the thing that you're going to find is that there are just a lot of them, and they come in handy for targeting multiple elements a lot, or doing things that are a little bit harder to do natively just with regular CSS, right? And so there are ways of selecting every couple of children. So my favorite pseudo selector is nth child. And what nth child will do is, like, let's say if I want to select every second paragraph, right? I can do 2, right? Or if I want every even paragraph, I can put even in there. If I want to do some sort of like algorithm, I can 2n+1 can go in here, right? And so the idea here is that you can do a lot of really interesting things, and what this nth child will enable us to do is select every couple of paragraphs, or the first paragraph, or the even paragraphs, or the odd paragraphs. And so there are just like these pseudo selectors that can enable you to do some more fancy stuff, but it's not something that you run into a lot. It's something that, like, I probably don't have many of them memorized, and as I need them, I kind of just Google them. 2 colons versus 1 colon is just preference. I think most of the time I do 1. Sometimes, like, if depending on whose style guide you're following, you might do 2. Yeah. So I think that's what the pseudo selectors are really for. They just give you a little bit more oomph to your selectors. And then somebody asked specifically about the before and after. So the cool thing is, with the before, you can target the stuff that comes just before the paragraph, and with the after, you can target stuff that just comes after the paragraph. So kind of like giving you almost like 3 selectors in one, because you can do paragraph before, you can do paragraph after, and it's kind of the stuff that comes like right before and after of those paragraphs. And people can get really wild with this stuff. People can get really wild with this stuff. If we do one div CSS, let's see if it pops up. Yeah, a single div. Here you go. So here are singular divs. So every single thing that you see on this page right now is a singular div, and then the actual styling is all CSS. So if we look at this raccoon, for example, and we inspect, that raccoon is legitimately just one div, right? But we can use the before pseudo selector to give us like an extra thing to select. So on the before pseudo selector, it's the tail. On the after pseudo selector, it's the bowl. So the actual raccoon is probably just the div, but the before we can use for the tail and the after we can use for the div. And the idea is that this is all done in CSS. It's literally just one div. There's no other HTML here. There's no other HTML here. It's one div. And then all the things you see are CSS. So everything that you see on this page right here is all CSS. And I think that's pretty cool. Yeah. So it's just one div, and then all that cool stuff with CSS. So that just shows you like how far you can go with just CSS, and it can get pretty wild. Let me put this in chat. There you go. Cool. Also, I guess since we're here, let's talk about the Learn with Leon about page. What you might have noticed is that if you're doing this kind of first, we don't have any concept of like things looking good on a certain screen or not. And so you might have had to have picked like a width and then just gone with that width, right? So that's kind of what I did here, is I just went with the width. We hadn't talked about kind of putting widths on containers. We haven't talked about kind of how to do things. So I just made sure that I kind of picked the size, and that's how I built out the actual site. So if we look at our HTML, remember, this is not going to be perfect HTML. It's not going to be perfect CSS. We're not worried about pixel perfect at the moment. But I just have some basics here. I had an H1 for the Learn with Leon and Friends. I had a nav for the About Us and Portfolio. Why do you think I would put the About Us and Portfolio in a nav? Why would I put the About Us and Portfolio in a nav? Yeah, they're probably going to be a navigational elements on every single page, right? No matter what page I go to, that navigation is going to be there. Same thing with this navigation down below. On every single page, the Twitch, the Twitter, the YouTube are going to be on each of those pages. So for me, that's navigational content, right? It's going to be on every single page. I don't want Google to really care about it in terms of keywords, but I need my individuals to be able to navigate around the site based on these links. You'll notice inside of my nav, I used a strong, and then the portfolio is just a regular link, right? Why do you think I went with a strong for the About Us? Why did I go with the strong for the About Us? If I chose it because it made it bolded, did I fuck up? If I chose strong because I like how it bolded it, did I mess up? Yeah. I chose it for accessibility reasons. Exactly. Good job, chat. I chose it for accessibility reasons. How does a user know what page they're on? Well, if they're looking at the navigation and they see that the About Us is in a strong, that could give them a clue as to like what page they are on. So they know that they're on the About Us page because that part of the navigation is put in the strong tag. It'll add emphasis so they know where they're at in the navigation. So just something to think about there. So I put the page that we were actually on instead of a strong. The other thing was a link. Now, could I have done nav, ul, li's, anchor tags inside of here? I could have. But like I said, I don't always write perfect code. This was more about kind of getting the layout done. I wanted it to look like the photo, and so I went through as quickly as I could, right? And so could have done nav, ul, li, sure. If you did that, perfect. But I think some other cool stuff here was that strong, and then of course linking to the other page. And then there's something else here that I did. I think that's kind of a little bit of a cheat. I think there's a little bit of a cheat. This right here, it could have been what? What could that have been? Could have been what? Could have been a border. Yeah, it could have been a border, right? It could have been a border. But instead of having to figure out all that border nonsense, I just did a little cheeky pipe character. Pipe characters are typically right above your enter key on your keyboard. So I put a little pipe character in between. So instead of border, I just put a pipe character and moved on. I think the other stuff is pretty clear. This About Us is definitely the H2 because Learn with Leon and Friends is the H1. About Us being an H2. Paragraph. This is an image, right? My image has an alt tag, right? Saying that's the Learn with Leon logo. And then down here, I have another navigational element. So I have my nav with my anchor tags in it and my pipe characters in between, right? Once again, I could have done nav, ul, li, anchor tag, could have done all that, but I want to show you that even myself, right, won't always write excellent code. If I'm just trying to get through it, I'm going to get through it. And I cheated with the pipe characters again. Could this been inside of a footer? Yep, could have been inside a footer. Could this been inside of a header? Yep, could have been inside of a header. That's up to you. Right? I want to demonstrate that we don't always have to write perfect code. If I was trying to really needle this, then yeah, header, footer, nav, ul, li, anchor tag, right? But when you're first starting, please don't needle over just one very little thing instead of getting the job done. This looks like the photo. And I got it done super quick, right? Got it done super quick. Looks like the photo. Job's done. I move on, right? Now, could I come back and add my ULs, my LIs? Of course I could. Could I come back and add my footer, my headers? I could, right? But in the beginning, we don't care. We just don't care in the beginning. We're here to get the job done. Closers and refactor. Cool. Some folks asked this, I think, last office hours, and it was this: why does the image go before the paragraphs? Anybody else figure out why the image goes before the paragraphs? Yeah, so this was the original purpose of having a float. Floats were originally created for text to wrap around stuff, right? That was the original reason for floats, was to be able to have text wrap around stuff. Then we kind of co-opted floats for layout. But if you want the text to wrap around the image has to come first, or else you have to do a lot of like weird positioning stuff, right? So you put the image first so that the text can then wrap around it, right? If you put this below, then the text will kind of just be by itself, and then the image will be chilling at the bottom. So that gives us a hint that we're eventually going to float the image and the text is going to wrap around it. Excuse me. Let's take a look at some of the CSS here. Once again, not writing perfect CSS, just getting into the thick of it. I give it on the body like a base font family, a base font size. Line height has to do with how tall each block of text is, right? So the bigger the line height, kind of like the more space between lines, right? Some margin on the body, some border, and some padding. So if we're looking, we have this border here, and if we inspect on the body, and then we use our tool here in the from DevTools, we can see the padding there. That's how we pushed the stuff away from the border, right? That's how we push the stuff away from the border. And then we have our border, which is 5 pixels. And we have our margin, which is 30 pixels, right? Oh, are there other ways to do this? Absolutely. All right, absolutely other ways to do this. But for me, it seemed pretty simple. On the body, Just put some margin to kind of push the border away from the outside of the page. Use some padding to push the stuff that's inside away from the border, and that's it. Remember, padding exists between the element and the border. Margin exists outside of that element and pushing it around. Cool. Some of this other stuff you probably didn't need to think about, like font size or line height. It's just something I did pretty quickly. Border kind of normal, 5 pixel solid green, background sky blue, and then just like a base font color. It wasn't exactly white, so it's just kind of like a little bit like off white a little bit. My anchor tags, they needed to be bolded. They just look bolded in the image, right? I mean, my anchor tags a little bit bold. They had a specific color that I got with the digital color meter. And then the H1 had a different font family, which was Georgia, and it was italicized, right? And so I made sure that that H1 had the font family of Georgia. It was centered and it was italics, right? Nothing too wild there. Cool. Did you use JS to make your active page link white? No, just HTML. Right here is how I made the About Us white. Remember, the About Us was inside of the About Us that's in the nav was in that strong tag. So I just made the strong tag white. That's all. If I had multiple pages, then I would have given that About Us in the nav maybe an ID or something like that. Yeah. But for right now, I don't have to do anything other than just make it white. Yeah. Can you explain why About Us and Portfolio did not center with text align? Because I only put text align on the H1. If you see here, the H2 does not have text align, so it shouldn't center. Yeah, H1 does have text align though. Why don't you use a pseudo selector in the CS for the About Us and the nav? You could, but I try to stay away from pseudo selectors unless I need to use them. Yeah. Will you share this at the end? Of course. Yeah. Well, and when we kind of wrap up class, I'll send out a zip with all the code. Can you talk about choosing size values like pixel values, percent values? Right now you're eyeballing it. Eventually you'll work with a designer that'll give you kind of the final designs and typically sizes to use. But a lot of times I just kind of like pull up the photo and I play with it until it looks like the photo. Really, there's really no kind of better process than just that, right? And eventually you get better at like being like, oh, that's roughly in this ballpark, and you play with it a little bit. And what I like to do is I'll open it up, and let's say I click on this About Us, inspect. Or what's something that had an actual font size? Did the H1 have a font size? I would just give it a font size. So let's right click on the About Us. You can see that we're on the About Us. And then what I can do is I can come into this element style right here. So I right clicked on About Us. I did inspect. And then I come down here to this element style. And what I can do here is I can do font size. And let's put in 18 pixels. Right? I made it too small. And then all I'm going to do is just hold my up arrow. All right, went up to 35. Does 35 look good? If not, I can bring it down a little bit. Let me go down to 30. All right, there I'm doing 30, right? And so I can play with it right here in the Chrome Dev Tools, and I can find that sweet spot, right? Find that sweet spot. And then if it was 32, I'd go up by 2 and be like, all right, that looks like the photo. And then once I'm done, you can't like save it here and it saves into your file. You do have to like go back to your CSS and write that number in. But the cool thing is that these Chrome Dev Tools are here to make our lives so much easier. And that's why, again, I asked you to use Chrome in the beginning, so you have access to these tools. And so the idea is that I'm able to kind of go in here and play with it until it looks just right, and you don't have to like type, refresh, type, refresh, type, refresh. You can come in here and play around with stuff. And so when you do that, it makes it a little bit easier to figure out sizings and things like that. We're gonna have a class on Chrome DevTools, not just Chrome DevTools, but we'll have a class on like debugging and kind of a lot more of these types of tips, but really it just comes about as we run into stuff during class. Are there any other browsers that let you use the inspect tool in the same way? Yeah, Firefox has pretty good tools. I find it just misses a little bit of things, or it doesn't just work as well as Chrome, but yeah, Firefox does have tools. Yeah. Yeah, Edge is just Chrome. Yeah. Yeah, Edge is just Chrome reskinned now. Cool. Alrighty, let's keep moving here. See if there's anything else that I think that was important in here. Just some coloring, I wanted to like increase the distance on the bottom of the paragraph. So like if we right click inspect on the paragraphs, you can see that they have a little bit of margin on the bottom. That just helps push the paragraphs away. Like I wanted a little bit more room between the paragraphs. And so that margin is what's giving us that room between the paragraphs. Yeah. Yeah, dev tools are really fun. When I teach, so I used to volunteer with 7th graders, teaching them how to code. And the very first thing I always taught my 7th graders day one is to use the inspect tool. So they would come in, right click, inspect, and then you can even like come here in the text and put like report card A+, right? And so they got an A++, right? They got an A++, and then they would just close out. You just close it out. Look, Ma, I got an A++, an A++. That's the first thing I taught my 7th graders. Yeah, lots of fun stuff you can do with the inspect tool. This was just us playing around to show off the pseudo selectors. The image, the only thing that was really important on the image was the floating right. And then once you have it floating, you can play with the margin or the padding to kind of get it exactly where you wanted it. Either or is fine here. Margin can push it around, padding technically pushes it around too. There's really no like right or wrong one. I just did both just to show you that you could use either or here. But yeah, so I got it floating, and then you use the margin and padding to like get it in the exact spot you wanted it. And I also gave it a basic height. And then the only other thing that was bothering me was that my pipe characters were not gray. And so for my pipe characters, I gave the nav a color of gray. And that's how my pipe characters were able to stay gray, even though like the anchor tags and the strongs were different colors. That's kind of it. So this one was not something I spent a lot of time on. I went through it pretty quickly. I used some basics. Are there things that I would go back and update? Yes. Are there things that I would change? Yes. That's how I want you to get through a lot of these first kind of iteration projects. Is you're not going for pixel perfect. You're not going for, it has to be like, you shouldn't be pulling out your ruler, right? You want to make sure that you're going through them, you're making reasonable decisions, right? And you can always come and refactor once you get it to where you need it to be. But a lot of folks early on will dump 5 hours into something like this instead of getting it to just close enough, right? A rough draft, exactly. And so that's something I want you to take to heart as you go through a lot of these early practice problems. Cool. And of course, I'll share my solution with y'all after office hours. All right, let's take some time to look at some questions in the Slido, and then and then we'll come back, we'll take our break, and then we'll do the layouts that we had to do for homework together. Wait, your window size down proportionally. Did you use a media query? No, it's just I didn't have any set widths on it. So if my window is really big, it would be really big. My window is really small, it was really small. But there's no changes. There's no content decisions that were being made. So no media queries or anything like that. Sugar High, can you show us how you select the font size on the element? The way I just showed you with using the inspector is how I figured it out. Yeah, play with it in the inspector until it looks good to me, and then boom, that's what I use. What's the border hack for again? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Skip for class. Yeah, we've gone over specificity a lot, so definitely watch our last 2 classes. How do I give the page itself a set width and height? Might not be the best idea, but you can just go in and give it a height and width on the body, or wrap everything inside of a container, give that container a height and width. Maybe not the best thing when it comes to responsiveness, but you can totally do it. Having issues with the color on my CSS showing up with code. I understand what you mean by that. Having issues with the color on my CSS showing up with code. Talk to a mod. So please don't message the mods for coding help. Please use the channels. The mods are wonderful people, so they're probably going to help you. But please don't message myself. Don't DM me. Don't DM the mods asking for coding help. We literally have help channels for that. So go post your question in the channels. You're more likely to get an answer there than you are from us directly. In fact, I will ignore you if you ask me for coding help. Just go directly into the channel and ask. You know, pretty much every single channel, every single question is almost always answered. And so please don't overload an individual person. There's thousands of y'all, and the mods need to be able to see stuff that they really need to be able to see, right? So please jump in those help channels. Tons and tons of people there to help you in those help channels. Yeah, the threads are a game changer for sure. How can I change the amount of characters that Visual Code shows for columns? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. I mean, like mine, it just toggles the soft wrapping, and it just has to do with the size of my window. Yeah. Memphis A, thank you for the hydration. Cheers to you. Yeah, Mojo, we already sent out the form, and so folks are filling out the form. We have until Tuesday. I message people in the help channel. Well, don't message people in the help channel. Put your question into the help channel. Just because you didn't get an answer doesn't mean you should go message the mods. That's not how this works. Please don't do that. There's thousands, there's 23,000 people on our Discord, and the mods get a lot of questions that are like very important for them to answer, things that are breaking, things like that. They don't really honestly have time for coding help. So use the channels, please. And if for some reason you don't get an answer within 24 hours, you can post again, and you'll most likely get help the second time. If it's a really wild question, then maybe nobody knows how to answer it. You might have to go somewhere else. Do lines of code matter? I mean, more lines of code means more, like, longer the file might take to like run, but early on it really doesn't. Try and be as most efficient as you can. Yeah. No, I mean the help channels have been amazing. Like it's just wild to see. Like I've never seen anywhere the amount of help folks get. Like um I've been on Stack Overflow for 12 years. I've been everywhere. Like I've never seen people get the amount of help that we have in those channels right now. It is absolutely wild. You'll look at those channels, you'll see 100 questions and 100 questions with answers, and some of them have like 50 plus like answers in the thread. It's absolutely wild. And so the community is the best I've ever seen for getting help. It is beautiful. It's really awesome to see. And so I appreciate everyone that gets in there. I appreciate if you feel like you know how to answer something, you jump in there. Even if you only kind of know it. It's been wonderful to see. Cool. Take a look at some of these questions here. All right. Top question right now. Should we always go in depth on the materials you give, or just read and gain the basic understanding before class? You want to be able to go as deep as you possibly can with the time that you have during the week. So the idea here, as I bring it up a lot, is you want to go deep, not wide. And each person is going to have a level of deepness that they can go. So I want you to go as deep as you can with the time that you have, right? And for each person, it's going to be different, right? For each person, it's going to be different. But yeah, all the important stuff will always cover in class. All the core stuff will always cover in class. But I really need you showing up, right? I need you to show up having this not be the first time you've heard some of these words, right? I need you to have shown up putting in the cognitive effort to understand some of these hard concepts, so that it's not a first pass, but a clarifying pass, right? The first pass you do, you're still confused. You might not understand some things. But then when we do it together in class, it might clear up the gaps that you might have had. But if you're constantly showing up to class having not done any of the reading, there's no way that you're going to come to conclusions in class. There's no way things are going to click for you in class. Things will click if you've done the reading and you've grappled with the topics beforehand, and you show up ready to get clarification and ask good questions. Yeah. All code looks good and works on other machines, but the machine doesn't display CSS anyway. Not glitch triple or anything. Yeah, there might be something wrong with their install of their operating system. That's kind of it. Sometimes you just run into computer issues. It's a bit early, but if I show up for an interview, should I bring my laptop and expect to do a coding problem, or how does this actually work? So we're going to cover all that when we get to like how to interview. But yeah, you typically bring your machine. You will typically get a coding challenge. You'll be expected to solve that coding challenge. They will be watching you. You'll be talking with them the whole time as you're coding out the challenge. But a lot of companies, like I would say some companies have a really strong kind of interview process where they are asking you to solve coding challenges, and you're sitting there in the heat of the moment. And then I would say for about half of our students last cohort, they didn't have any technical challenges at all. So it really does come down to each company and each team, how they do things, but we're not there yet. We got a ways to go before we start worrying about that stuff too much. What if you don't have a laptop? Unfortunately, I think they kind of expect you to have some sort of machine to interview with. A lot of companies sometimes will take you into like at the office and you'll pair program on their machines, but most of the stuff right now is remote, so you'll be interviewing remotely before you ever show up somewhere. Yeah, a lot of times it's also like on a whiteboard, right? A lot of times it's on like a whiteboard, so you're not even really typing on your machine. But it's about comfort, right? Yeah, I think a difference of that. It's about comfort. You want to have your environment, you want to have your setup, and so that's why it's helpful to like have your stuff. All right. Will we be learning to deploy websites and maintain them along with basic security best practices? Yeah, you want to see how to do it real quick? Hold on. Let me make sure I'm logged in here. All right, I am. Beautiful. So the question is, will we be learning to deploy websites and maintain them along with security best practices? You ready? Here's the about page we just did. I just dragged it to this location, and there we go. Site is live. Boom. I'm done. This is a live site. I can put it in chat. There you go. We are fully live. We are fully live, and we are employing security best practices. Next questions. So this is called Netlify Drop. And so the cool thing about Netlify Drop is you literally go to netlify.com/drop. And all you have to do, first try, exactly. All you have to do is drag it into that little box there, and it hosts it for you. It's great hosting. It's completely free. It's completely secure, specifically because it's static files, right? And that's literally it. You're done. Don't ever worry about it. There you go. So you don't have to worry about anything more than that. When we get to our full stack applications, we'll do a little bit more. But as like full stack web developers, it's not something that we really focus on. Like security is not a thing we really focus on. We use tools and systems that we know have that baked in. And then if we're on a larger team, there's people that really, really focus on that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, that's the idea, is that the ecosystem right now is such that we fortunately don't have to worry too much about these things. Yeah. So we'll learn the basics. We'll learn how to do simple stuff, but yeah, nothing too wild. It literally takes 3 seconds to host your basic sites. I think that's pretty cool. About Netlify. I love me some Netlify. I just joined today. Can I catch up somehow? Yeah, of course. If you join our Discord, you can see all the past classes and the materials that were due for those classes. And then you can join the catch up crew and get caught up. So yeah, definitely join us on Discord and we'll get to it. If hiring managers are already reaching out to us on LinkedIn, should we interview for software engineer roles so early? Absolutely not. Unless you have some past experience. What you want to be doing to all those recruiters that are reaching out to you now is say, hey, I'm not currently interviewing, but I would love to reach back out in 3 months. Can we set up a time to talk in 3 months? And they'll go, yeah, of course. Let's catch up in 3 months, right? A lot of the recruiters that are reaching out to you right now, they just spray and pray, right? There's probably no rhyme or reason behind why they're reaching out to you. And so you shouldn't get, like, I always hate to say this, but you shouldn't get super excited. They're spamming anybody they can, right? Because they get paid if they find someone, right? And so for my favorite thing is when you're kind of still early in the journey, it's just, I have like a canned response. I respond with saying, hey, I'm not looking at the moment, but I will be in 3 months. Can we connect then? Right? And then that way they know that like you're not interested right now, but you have a connection for when it does come time for you to start interviewing. Maybe you have a little bit more of a warmer of a lead, right? And this is of course not true if like you already have experience, you've already done like all the work that you need to get a job. But if you're joining the cohort now and you're going through the process together, we're not ready to interview. But don't just not answer. Just have something canned response. You say not yet, but it will be in the next couple of months. and that way you keep them in the loop. Should we learn Ruby or PHP? Neither. You should learn JavaScript and get a job. Cool. What are the differences between clearing a float, containing it, or just using the clear fix technique? So they are all used in different scenarios. Clearing has a very specific use, and that's when you float stuff, you float it off the page, and anything that comes after it slides on up. And so the content that comes after your floated content, you clear it so that when stuff floats, it doesn't slide, it just stays where it's at. So that's clearing, right? And then containing it is just, I mean, maybe you put a container around something. And then clear fix is, let's say you have a section, right? It has no height. You put 3 floated divs or 3 floated sections inside. That container grows around that content. But if you float those elements inside, it collapses because there's nothing no longer inside of it. And so what ClearFix does is, even if you're floating stuff, it keeps that container open. Even if you float something, the container stays open and doesn't collapse. And the way it does it is it puts a little dot after the content. So no matter if it's floating or not, that container stays open. So clearing is like stopping stuff from sliding up, and ClearFix stops stuff from collapsing. That's it. Not really sure what I mean by containing it. But yeah, those are the ones that I think makes sense for me. Cool. All right, folks. We're at the top of the hour, right? We're at the top of the hour. If you're new around here, we always like to be healthy. We like to take our breaks. We want to get up if you're able, stretch, move around, hydrate, look out the window, right? Make sure that you're staying healthy. Make sure that you're getting your stretches and your breaks in. We're in this for a marathon, not a sprint. Let me bring the timer on. I'm gonna put 5 minutes on the clock here. Berg is the name. Bimbala did the chain. Exactly. All right, folks. Let's take our break. I'll see you all in a few seconds. Well, 5 minutes to be exact. Peace. Team 5. All right, there we go. Sorry, the camera overheated. Backup cam's on. I don't know what it is about the Sundays, but on Sundays the cam overheats for some reason. I'm not sure why. I gotta figure that out. Bob did it, yeah. Bob's toiling. All right, so yeah, this is the backup cam. A little different. I'll give the other one a second to cool down a little bit and then probably bring it back online. All right, let's do some questions and then we will do the layout that we had for homework. So let's go ahead and do questions and then layouts that were for homework. Camera needs to hydrate too, exactly. All right. How to land an internship while being in 100 devs. I do not recommend you do an internship while doing 100 devs. That would be too much work. And I don't like internships because they often pay way too little and or not at all, and you should never do free work. So yeah, not a fan. What are the reasons behind the house namings? They're famous computer scientists. So as we kind of get folks into different houses, we'll share more about the different meanings behind them. But yeah, they're just famous computer scientists. When does required networking start? So we're going to start easing into it next week, and then it'll be a requirement the week after. So we're going to learn how to network this week, and then after this week, it'll be a requirement. Cool. All right. Next question. When will be the best time to start checking the code in more than one browser? How can we obtain compatibility with more than just one browser? That's not something you'll have to ever worry about during this class. You just won't have to worry about it. When you're in the job, maybe you'll be doing some sort of multi-browser testing, but if you're using modern semantic HTML and CSS and you've used reset or normalize or something like that, you're probably like 99% of the way there. But yeah, it's not something that we'll really focus on when you're on the job. That might be something you have to do. And each team will handle that a little bit differently. Discord is still very overwhelming for so many people. Can you tell us how much consideration you're putting on Discord activity for house touring? It's a factor, but not like the only factor. Yeah. And in fact, I think folks that are too active on Discord is actually is a problem. I'm looking for folks that are being helpful, and I'm looking for folks not folks that are just like talking. That means nothing to me. I'm looking for folks that are helpful. Do you help other people online? Do you help other folks on Discord? Yeah, people that just like put 400 words a minute, like that does nothing for me, and I think you should probably chill a little bit. Yeah, if you're just spamming memes, then yeah, that does nothing for you. I think we're going to eventually have to talk a little bit more about that, just because some folks feel the need to type 100 words an hour, 100 words a minute, I mean. So yeah, don't worry too much about that right now. It's not like a big factor. I'm looking more for people that are helpful, not folks that are putting in like time. And then also you got to find your space on Discord, right? If you're just in House Hamilton and you're going like, oh, this is too much, well, that's the biggest channel, right? So find the other pockets on Discord that can be a little bit smaller, and then that's what the study communities are for. Study communities are going to give you a smaller group of folks to connect with and hang out with that aren't just the main channels with 20,000 people in them. Dang, okay, I'll be quiet unless I'm helping. No, that's not what I'm saying here. There are just some people that literally will spam, not spam, but every thought that comes to their mind goes into the Hamilton channel. I don't get it. You do you, but you got to realize that the Hamilton channel is just a lot of people, 20,000 people in it, and there are a good handful of folks that stream of consciousness into that channel. If you're just in Hamilton channel going, this is too chaotic, then yeah, you're in for a surprise. Find channels that are a little bit smaller, that are a little bit more an affinity to you, and yeah, you don't have to be going ham on Discord. You can just use the help channels, right? You can maybe just join the channels that are interesting to you. But yeah, the study communities, I think that'll make it a little bit easier for you if you still find Discord overwhelming. Cool. Alrighty. All right, next question here. Are we going to make a portfolio site or mostly just focusing on a 100 hours project? No, you'll have a portfolio site. Yeah, having a portfolio site's pretty important when it comes time to getting a job. You're not going to sink a huge amount of time into your portfolio, but having a portfolio that can highlight the projects that you can actually talk about in interviews can be pretty helpful. A portfolio in of itself is not going to get you a job. I see a lot of like videos that are like the ultimate portfolio. Like the portfolio is not the thing that gets you a job. It's just a place to put the stuff that will get you a job, the things that you can talk about, the things that when they come in interviews you can show and highlight and demonstrate. And a portfolio is just a convenient place to put all that stuff. So yeah, we'll definitely have a portfolio before you graduate, and it'll have bangers only, not boot campy type projects on there. Too late to start? No, come on through. Where do you find the hand exercises you recommend? Dr. Levi, the fitness doctor, is who I recommend. No stinky, smelly bootcamp projects, exactly. Yeah, if you look at some of the alumni's portfolios, and I'll share as we get closer to like needing to build out portfolios, I'll share a lot of example portfolios. I'll share a lot of alumni portfolios, and they're great. They had 100 hours projects on there. They had machine learning projects on there. They had client projects on there. They had team projects on there. So by the time you leave, you're gonna have like really worthwhile projects to put on your portfolio, like actual clients, actual team projects, 100 hours projects, machine learning projects. Like you're gonna have stuff that really does help you stand out from the crowd, and all good things with time, right? Can you believe that we're only 3 weeks into this experience? Like think about how far y'all have come in just 3 weeks, and imagine where you're going to be in 30, right? This is where you're at in just 3. Imagine where you're going to be in 30. So give yourself some time, it'll come. Should we be using the main element for semantic purposes or just ignore it? Yeah, if there's a semantic reason to use main, definitely use it for sure. Should we start a Spotify collaborative playlist for coding for all the folks? I mean, go for it if you want. Yeah. I just used the stuff you're hearing on stream is Stream Beats. It's a lo-fi playlist that's completely royalty free, so I don't get copyright struck for playing this music. So yeah, I just use that music every class because I don't have to worry about getting taken down. There's like one class that we did that went pretty long, and it was before I had my Spotify looping the playlist, and it like left the playlist, and like the very first song get played that was not in the playlist, I got copyright struck on YouTube for. So I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's all royalty free music. Yeah. Yep, Harris Heller, exactly. Stream Beats by Harris Heller. because it's all automatic, right? And so it just got taken down immediately. Cool. Where should our knowledge be when we first find our freelancing client? And should we offer them what specific website building skills should we have to do? We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're going to get there. I promise you, we're going to get there. I promise you we're going to get there. And when we get there, you're going to know exactly what you got to do and how to do it. We're going to have full classes on how to freelance, right? So don't worry, don't stress. A lot of people are putting too much stress on their shoulders to worry about and figure out about the things that are going to be coming in 3 weeks, right? So you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Don't worry. Focus on the stuff that you got to get done now. You got a lot of reading, a lot of homework to get through. Focus on that. When it comes time to start getting the freelancing clients, we're gonna have full classes on it. Don't worry. I got you. Got you. So much other stuff to do right now. Don't worry. I got you. Chase says media queries go up at the top. When making the layout response to the media only works at the bottom of the page to clear the floats. Why is this? Has to do with specificity. So when you're using your media queries, where you put them, the cascade is still in effect, so you have to be careful. Top, bottom, that's a preference. Mine typically go at the bottom, but either or. Do you recommend making a personal site to display your projects? We just use something like Wix to make it. No, we're gonna get there, right? We're gonna have everyone build out their portfolio. It's gonna be part of a project that we build during class. And you want to put some pride into your portfolio. I don't recommend using Wix or Squarespace, but I do recommend using templates. And so you want to be able to talk to someone that's looking at your portfolio, right? Because hey, thank you for the raid. You know what? I saw you on live before we went live, and I was like, I hope that they're live when we're done so we can raid. And then you raided us. I love it. For those that have not followed, especially those that are curious about Ruby, you definitely need to give them a follow. Hold on, let me see if I can put out the type it out here. I need to get a shout out command. There we go. Boom. Please give them a follow, especially if you're interested in Ruby or anything like that. Thank you for the raid. Hope your stream went well, and I really want us to raid you as soon as possible. They're one of my favorite streamers on Twitch. Do a lot of fun stuff, and so hopefully we get to come your way soon. But I definitely saw you live before I went live, and I was like, I hope that they're still live when we're done. I'll share the link on Discord too, after, for the folks that didn't see it to follow now. I'll share it on Discord when we're done stream as well. But hope your stream went well. Thanks for swinging by. Thanks for bringing all the folks with you. For folks that are joining us, we're just doing office hours. We run a free software engineering bootcamp, and on Sundays we just ask lots of questions. You can do !ask if there's a question you would like to ask, and then we're going to look at some very, very simple responsive websites soon. Do you recommend starting to practice at least one leak code problem a day? No, we're nowhere near ready for leak code yet. Eventually we'll, though. Eventually we'll do one a day, but we're not there yet. What legend starter did you pick? I haven't started yet. Cool. Hey, I appreciate that. Huge respect for all you do in the free education you offer. Hey, we're about. I appreciate it. Thank you. Cool. What do you see as the biggest misconceptions people have so far of this cohort? The biggest misconceptions folks have so far of this cohort. I don't know if there's any big misconceptions. I think the biggest thing right now is two things. One, folks really stressing about stuff that'll come in the future, right? So really stressing about their portfolio, really stressing about their client projects, really stressing about their 100 hours projects. We're just so far away from that because we're only in week 3 that it just doesn't do you any favors to put that extra stress on you when you have so many other things you have to be putting your time, effort, and energy into. It'll come, right? And if you don't trust me that it'll come, you can just go on YouTube and see what we're going to get to, right? You can just quickly look at the titles of the videos and be like, oh, whew, in class 12, Leon will get there, right? And so I think that's the biggest stress that I see a lot of folks having, that I just wish you could take that anxiety off your shoulders and it would go away. And then the other thing that I see a lot of people just putting too much like effort into or too much thought into are the houses. And I say it again, house just doesn't matter. If we looked at the alumni Twitter space on Friday, we had somebody from House Hamilton that got a job super quick, right? So the houses just don't matter. It's just that touring, I like to have a smaller group that I can just interact with, that where it's not a flood fest of messages. But that's it. There's nothing else big there. You're not missing out on anything by not being in touring. You're not missing out on anything not being in Hopper. Most folks that got jobs were probably in Hamilton last cohort just because it was the biggest one. So I think I see people stressing out about stuff that'll come for the future. And I also see people stressing out about houses when it just does not matter for you to like get a job or to be successful in the program. Yeah. Yeah, it's the work you put in. Exactly. Yep. Cool. How old were you when you started coding? So I was very fortunate that I had a programming class in 6th grade. So yeah, I do remember having a programming class in 6th grade. I always wanted a computer growing up. I didn't get one until much later. And then in high school, I actually had 2 years of computer programming because I went to an engineering high school in Philly. And then got to university and didn't study any computer science or programming at all. And only when I started to build businesses did I pick it back up. We need full body exercises. I got you, Kachi. I'll share some of my favorite full body exercises. There are 2 exercises that I do very faithfully. One is Alan Thrall's like weightlifter flexibility routine. And I like that one because it's a quick like 10-minute stretch. It takes me like 10-20 minutes to get through it. But I do it multiple times a day. And it's literally the best thing I found for like all the things that I think get stressed just by sitting so much. And then the other thing I use is there's like this video I watched that helps me stretch my back out a little bit more. And then Dr. Levi, the fitness doctor's hands exercises. So those 3 videos, I think, are the things that I use the most to help me stay like feeling good. And I'm a big boy, right? Like, let's get that clear. I'm a big boy, but these stretches are ones that I can always do. And on the days I don't do them, I feel it. And the days I do them, especially if I have to do them a couple days in a row, a lot of my pain starts to go away. So I'll share all 3 of those videos on Discord after this class. So I'll share the review that we did, like the practice problems we did, and I'll share those videos. Yeah. Yeah. Do we need to learn Bootstrap or Tailwind? You don't need to, but they can be pretty cool to learn. Curious on what is bad about bootcamp projects. I'm currently in a web dev bootcamp, so I would love to know. Recruiters just see them a bazillion times. And so they know that you probably might not know how to code, but might have just been hand-fed projects. And so that's why they can be seen as bad. And that's why we don't put them on our portfolios, because everything is about passing a sniff test. Recruiters stand in the way between you and the person that's actually doing the hiring. So anything we can do to tip the scales in our favor to get past that sniff test and to the person that's going to actually evaluate our code is something we have to do. And the easiest thing to do is to not have like generic bootcamp projects in your portfolio, because most recruiters can see that a mile away. You already covered remote versus local, but what about jobs where you're willing to relocate? You'll see a lot of them. Relocation bonuses are a thing. Yeah. Cool. Let's do one or two more questions here, and then we're going to review those layouts that we did. I keep looking at this camera that's off when I should be looking at this camera that's on. How often do you see people being passed over for jobs due to their age? I've personally only ever seen it that I actually think it happened once. Yeah. Out of like the hundreds of people I've helped get jobs, I think I've only ever seen it once. If you were older, right? If you were older, you have experience that you can package up and give yourself a huge leg up compared to folks that don't have other experience. And so it all comes down to how you craft your story, how you put together your narrative to why you're the best software engineer that's interviewing for the job. My folks that are older, that craft a great story, have a great resume that lends to validity to that story, they do better than my younger students when it comes time to get a job. It just doesn't like the age just doesn't matter from what I've seen. Like, yes, you're gonna run into some people that have some sort of prejudice, but it's a numbers game. You're all networking your way into 60 applications. If one or two out of those 60s are weird, you just move on. You're gonna have 10 interviews that just don't go your way. You chalk it up to one of those 10 and keep moving. Does experience outweigh certifications? Absolutely. At least in web development, certifications just don't matter. Nobody's giving you a high paying job because of your certs. Web development's just, it's about what you can do and what you can build, not about what test you took. When you showcase what you've built, how do you prevent people from stealing your code or copying your idea? You don't. Who cares? Ideas are cheap. Execution is what matters. So if you want to have like a startup or something like that, who cares? Somebody's always going to steal your idea. It's the execution that matters. But most people don't care. Like, so people are so worried that people are going to like steal their code and run off with their idea, but it's your idea and nobody really cares. Yeah, most often not. Our ideas are pretty out there and really personal to us, but not to other people. Yeah, very, very, very rare that would happen. But yeah, it's not something I think you need to worry about. What is your expectation of understanding all the advanced concepts in the Shehal reading? I expect you to have a basic understanding of them, right? That's what the reading's for. Basic understanding. You've put in some time to understand each of those basic concepts. They're marinating in your brain, and as we get to them in class, they make more sense. How do I know if Shehal's content is up to date? It just doesn't matter. You're there to learn the basics, not the cutting edge, right? There's so much stuff that you're gonna have to learn, so many things that it will update over time. But when you're learning the basics, especially if you've never touched HTML or CSS before, don't put that extra stress on you to be like bleeding edge or the most current. It doesn't matter. Get the job done. You're here to learn how to build, right? And as long as you can build and bring stuff into existence and get the job done, that's what matters. you'll always have time to read a blog post or watch a YouTube video on the most up-to-date stuff. Cool. We had some of those layouts. Let's jump to those layouts real quick, and then we'll keep answering questions. Let's see. They're further down here. All right. Let me go to Lily on here. Cool. So we did layout 1 during class, right? That 1 during class. Let's do 2 and 3. So if we're looking at it, right, if we're looking, right? Oh, sorry. One second. I gotta grab my iPad real quick. Sorry, just so we can draw on it. Be right back. 1 second. Knew I forgot something. All right. Cool. All right, so we got this layout. So if we're looking at this area here, chat, what would this be? What would that be? Header, nice. How about this? Cool. Footer, nice. How about these 3? Do we have any content that could enable us to do like more semantic choices? We don't really have any rhyme or content to give us what these could be. Like in our brain, we can maybe say, you know what, this is like a main, and this is an aside, and this is a section, but we just don't know. We just don't know. We don't have any like content that'll help us make these semantic decisions. And so I'm just going to make all of these sections for now, or just maybe so we can see it. Maybe we'll make this one aside just because. All right. I'm going to go ahead and open up the template that I gave y'all last class. I'm actually going to close these ones here. And let me go ahead and open up that template. All right, open the template in VS Code. Here's the one from last class. I'm just going to go ahead and chop this. And there we go. We have our header and then our 3 sections. Maybe we made one on the side or something like that, but we just have our 3 sections here. And I'm okay with this, right? We got our header, our 3 sections, and our footer. Cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at our CSS. I'm gonna come down here. I'm gonna get rid of the stuff that we have. We're just gonna do it all over again. I have this lovely like layout section here that I like, and this is where I do most of my stuff. Let's get rid of our media query for now. I don't need anything in the base style. So I'm just gonna go straight to layout, and so we're gonna put everything. And so if we look at this, the first thing we probably have to handle is the header and the footer. So let's do that. Header, comma, footer. What does the comma do, chat? What does the comma do again? What does the comma do? Yeah, it means both of them. Apply the styles to both the header and the footer, right? Both header and the footer. Cool. Let's give them a height of 100 pixels. Let's go ahead and give them a border of make it a little bit bigger so we can see it. 2 pixels solid black. And then we already know that we're gonna have some trouble with what? The footer is gonna have some trouble with what? If those things in the middle are floated, yeah, we're gonna have some trouble with floats. So let's go ahead and just put a clear both right here, just right out the gate, because we know that we don't want that footer to slide up in case we float any of that stuff in the middle. Nice. Cool. So we got our header, our footer, and then let's go ahead and give our sections a height. Let's just say 300 pixels, and let's give them a border of 2 pixels solid black. Cool. And if we look, maybe we say this is like 100%. This is like 3070, maybe like 3070. I think that's okay. 3070. So we can float them all to the left. Cool. And then we're gonna have to go ahead and give these two other sections their own sizing. 4060 people are saying 4060. Okay, we'll go 4060. All right, go 4060. So then let's go ahead and do section plus section and give that a width of 40%. And then we can do section plus section plus section and go ahead and give that a width of 60%. Cool. Let's see what we get when we do all that. Cool. Getting there, getting there. Let's see what we have here so far. Inspect. This section's not showing up. All right, this section's not showing up. This one's there, and then that one's there. So let's go ahead and see what do you think this section, why do you think this section's not showing up? What could be the problem here? What could be the problem here? No size on it. It could be collapsing. Let's take a look. We do have our box sizing border box, so we're good. These have percentages, but this one doesn't. Let's try this. Let's start here. Let's give this a width of 100%. Let's save it. There we go. It just didn't have any width, right? Just didn't have any width. I look like Santa Claus. Is hilarious. Just didn't have any width, right? Yeah, when you go to white background on this camera with the white background, I don't have the chroma key all the way. It's winter, Leon. There we go. Winter, Leon. It is a blizzard right now. East Coast blizzard. This is blizzard, Leon. But yeah, there we go. So now this section has 100% width, 40, 60, looking good. Header, footer. I think to me that looks pretty damn close to the layout. I think maybe the height's a little bit different here, but I feel good about it. Cool. How do we feel about this layout? Do you organize your properties in any way? You don't really have to. Some teams do. A lot of teams like to go alphabetical order, but I find that tedious, especially when I'm just trying to move fast through these. And we're just trying to get a feel for HTML and CSS right now. We're not writing like production ready code yet. So I think once you're in a team, they might have some rhyme or reason for how they do it. But for now, it doesn't really matter too much. Cool. Let's take a look at the next layout here. All right, I'm actually going to make a copy of this template. And I'm going to open the copy. That way you have this solution too if you want it. I'm going to call this like layout 3. There you go, layout 3. Now I'm going to open up layout 3 in VS Code. I'm going to close this one real quick. And I'm going to open up this layout 3 that we can then go after here. Cool. All right, so let's look at the layout. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 sections, right? And so for me, I see the, what is this chat? What could that be? Full header. How about this? Footer, nice. And how about all 4 of these? How about all 4 of those? Yeah, those are just sections to me. I don't think we have any more content to make a more semantic choice. And so I'm going to go with just sections there. Cool. All right, let's take a look at that. If we look at our HTML, we got a header, a footer, and we have 3 sections. So let's just go ahead and do another one. And I think Indifferent just said this, but there's so many different ways to go about each of these layouts. So if yours looks a little bit different than mine, or you just think a little bit different, but you still got the job done, that's great. Like we give this to 10 different developers, we're getting 10 different sets of code back. We have to make all 3 of them responsive for homework? No. The homework said just 15 minutes of pain, please. All right, so we got our 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we look, this second section is pretty much bigger than all the other ones. So I'm just going to give this second section a class. I'm going to give it the class of Big Boy. Cool. So that second section is going to have the class of Big Boy. And we'll go with that. Cool. Go to our CSS. Does the header and footer need to change for this one at all? Does the header and footer need to change at all? Nah, not really. For the sections, we probably should make one change for all the sections. What should the change be on our sections here? If we're looking at this layout, what should the change on our sections be? The width, yeah. Maybe let's make the width like 20%. That'll be 20 times 3 is 60, and then the middle one could be 40. And we can just change this to class of Big Boy. Cool. So that'll give all the sections originally a 20% width. And so 20 times 3, 1, 2, 3 would give us 60. And we have 40 left over for the Big Boy. So let's go ahead and save this all. Let's go ahead and open this in the browser. Cool. Looks good to me. Maybe a little bit thicker. Maybe a little bit wider in some places, but maybe if we're looking at the image, that's pretty dang close. That's pretty dang close. Maybe a little bit differences in height, but the layout's there, right? I would say maybe this has to be a little bit taller, it has to be a little bit taller, but that's about it. Looks good to me. Cool. How did this become responsive? Because it's percentages by default, right? So since it's a percentage by default, it's going to look good as you kind of make the screen bigger or smaller, but it's not necessarily fully responsive. Responsive is partly how it looks, but it's also the content decisions that you make at different screen sizes. So when we go from, say, like a desktop site to a mobile site, it's not just sizes that change. Our content stacks. We go from multiple columns to singular columns because we can scroll forever on mobile, right? And so responsiveness is not just size, but also the decisions you make at different sizes. And so we're going to see that all this week. This week, we're just going to go off the deep end with responsiveness. And so don't worry about too much right now. We'll get there this week. Which one is 15 minutes of pain? The one that is labeled 15 minutes of pain in the slides. So the slide literally says 15 minutes of pain. Cool. All right. So I think that's the layouts that we did. So we did both the layouts from homework. We did the simple site layout for homework. I think we're good with the homeworks for today. We'll spend probably the rest of our time looking at questions. And so if you have questions, I got answers. And so go ahead and you can do exclamation point ask, right? Do exclamation point ask, and we'll get to those questions. Cool. Any podcast recommendations for web dev? I like Syntax FM and Shop Talk Show. Those are my two favorite. How much backend will we be learning? Enough to build full stack web applications. So enough to build pretty much any project you want to build. If we're switching careers, do you recommend making a new LinkedIn, or we build up the old one? You build up your old one. Yeah. How do we get the downloads? They are in the Follow Along Materials channel on Discord. I can't find 15 minutes of pain in any of the slides. Then you didn't go look at the end of our last couple of classes. It'll be in there for you. Yeah. How do we balance studying, recall, networking, reaching out, helping out our cohort? What priority does it take? We happen to be struggling, want to be use of encouraging to others. You got to get yourself right before you get others right, right? So you got to start with you. It's like being on an airplane, right? When you're on an airplane, they say put your oxygen mask on before you help others. You got to do the same thing. So if you ultimately want to help others, help yourself first. Get stable, get comfortable, and then turn around and help others. Are there a lot of successful introverts in this world? Yeah, of course. I mean, a lot of developers are introverted. Yeah. "15 minutes of pain" was at the end of class 5, for those that are wondering. Exactly. How to deal with gaming addiction? Therapy. Seriously. If you know you have a clear addiction, you need help. And so I would recommend therapy as a means to getting through it. And then also just you got to make a decision, right? What do you want out of life? What do you want out of the time that you do have, and going after it, right? And so if you have the privilege of being able to make a decision like that, then doing it. If you can't actually make those kind of decisions, you might need more help to get those decisions done. So yeah, everybody's addictions is different, and so how you handle it is, there's really not one thing I could say that helps everyone, and that's why getting support for it is really important. Yep. Do you make your own broth for your pho? I mean, I order out my pho a lot, but I do make my own broths. Yeah. Will we learn Ruby on Rails? No, where we teach full stack JavaScript. Cool. What is Ruby? Ruby's just a different programming language. Yeah. Will there be any alumni from Canada or international in the Twitter spaces? Yeah, we're gonna hopefully have folks from all over join them. Cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other questions we had coming in here. Do you go sock sock shoe shoe or sock shoe sock shoe? Definitely sock sock shoe shoe. That'd be weird. I also don't really ever wear socks unless I'm like going on a run or a walk. I'm not really like probably gonna be putting on socks. Just keeping it real. How, based on your experience, harder will it be to get a job while being based in Poland on a US market? It is always very difficult to be outside the US but working in the US. It's very, very difficult. If you want to come to the US to work, it's next. I don't want to say it's impossible. It's just very, very difficult. Because I don't ever like to blow smoke up anybody's butt here, but like being remote but working for a US company is extremely difficult. You're going to have to work way harder to find opportunities. You're going to have to work way harder to network into those opportunities. Is it doable? Yes. Do we have folks last cohort do it? Yes. But you're committing to a much harder process. I actually think we had 2 people from Poland get jobs last cohort, if my memory serves me well. Are Haml and jQuery still relevant? I don't think I would start any new projects using jQuery, but you're gonna be working with a lot of legacy code and a lot of like updating old code to new code. So you'll probably run into jQuery at some point in your career. Does someone really check the homework, or is it just an act of turning it in to see that's behind the request? So the homework is always binary. You don't need me to tell you if you've done the homework right or not. It's, did you get the job done, right? Does yours look like the photo? Does yours do the thing that I asked it to do? So homework is always binary. If you're submitting the homework, I assume that you've solved the challenge, right? There's nothing that I would look at and be like, oh, I would do it different. No, because everyone's going to write code differently. And so for me, when you submit code, I already assume that it's done, right? Like that you've done it, right? That you've met the goal, you've achieved what you set out to achieve. And every single bit of homework will never be subjective. It'll always be, did you do what was supposed to be done or not, right? And so you actually don't need someone to look at your code. Just like when you're on the job, you won't need that either. Yes, there will be code review. Yes, you might submit stuff and tickets will get evaluated, but you still have to get yourself all the way to where the ticket is complete and you feel like you've done your best job at completing what was asked for you. So I don't give any subjective stuff. It's always binary. You either did it or you didn't do it. Yeah. Are you gonna do a boot camp with any other languages? Nope, because I actually don't really care about teaching folks how to code. I care about helping people get jobs. And so the fastest way to a job right now is JavaScript. If that was to change, then maybe I'd teach a different language. Is it too late to join? No, join us. Catch up. How many languages do you know? I've written code in a lot of very different languages. I don't think I would say I would know them. It's just I'm very quick at learning. So if I need a certain tool for a certain job, I know that give myself a weekend or two, I'll be at least okay enough to start using that tool, and I can pick up everything I need over time. I'm in Europe and can't really keep up with all the streams. Yep, all the classes are on YouTube already. Yeah. LeonNoel.com/YouTube or !YouTube here in chat. For those that started 100 devs late, should we submit homework? Yes. Keep yourself accountable, right? Keep yourself accountable, keep up, keep it in. Next question from the Slido. I have a toxic boss, but I'm not able to leave my job yet. How should I respond if he sees my online networking and preparing to change careers, and he confronts me that you're trying to learn skills that'll make you better at your current job, right? Say you notice that the company website, could use a little sprucing up, and you thought that maybe you could help with that. It's an interest that you have. Yeah. It's a hobby, right? It's a hobby, and you thought maybe that it could help with the current job. Please, could you make sure that Twitch streams VODs have relative class number on them? That would help for folks that are behind. The YouTube videos will always have the class numbers. The Twitch ones won't, because I only have so many characters in the Twitch name. So yeah, if you're on YouTube, it'll always have the class numbers in it, but Twitch probably won't. But the good thing is that they're in order and they have the correct dates on them. So you can always just check the date. Am I snitching on myself if I wear my wedding ring or mention my kids in tech interviews? Or is that a plus? I don't think you're snitching on yourself. Yeah, most people just won't care. It's that expectation that you have a family and like a life outside of work. And if you're applying at companies that care that you have a life outside of work, you definitely don't want to be working at those companies, and move on to the next interview. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you definitely don't want to work for those companies. Absolutely. Alrighty, folks. We're at the top of the hour. You know how we do. Let's go ahead and make sure we take our break. Make sure we stay healthy. If you are able, get up, move around, hydrate, kiss some babies, play with some pets, look out some windows. And we're going to be back in 5 minutes. Always like these chill office hours. Good hanging out with y'all. Loving the questions so far. Glad we got some homework review in. Let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll kind of get through the rest of the top questions here. See you all in 5. Here. Obsidian. My max sounds like a jet. Mine gets there too. Mage, of course. Juggling. Boy. 10 seconds left. Do you use anything like Notion or Obsidian for organizing? I use Notion. Pretty heavily into Notion. All my stuff is in Notion. All my planning is in Notion. All right, folks, come on back. Did you start Pokemon yet? No, not yet. I have a bigger block of time. If it's a main series game, I like move hell and earth, but not a main series game. To be truthful, I'm not super excited for it. The battling is like the main draw for me for Pokemon, and so the new mechanics aren't my favorite. But it looks fun. I'll still play it. A lot of people are saying it's like their favorite entry into the series. I like Monster Hunter, so it seems like Monster Hunter with Pokemon. We'll see. Super impressed so far. Yeah, it seems like it's getting really good reviews. Maybe I'll play it on stream. It'd be fun. A good foundation. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Like it's gonna be like the leap for the next thing. All right, folks, come on back. All right, first question on slide. You can do exclamation point ask if you want some questions to come in. We got a bunch to get through here still, and of course we'll always do a raid at the end of stream. I know we're going to discuss this later on, but networking is scary. What can you tell us to avoid feeling like it's possible? Networking is a skill that you get better at with time. It doesn't matter if you are naturally like a good networker or not. It's still a skill set. You have to learn how to do it, and then you have to practice doing it, and then it gets easier with time. So if you feel like you're not good at networking, you probably have never learned how to network correctly. And so we're going to have lots of classes on how to network, ways to do it properly, ways to make friends, and ways to do it if you're introverted, extroverted, or anywhere in between. So yeah, it's a skill. And so just like you've learned how to code, you'll learn how to network. Exactly, Simba. Exactly, Simba. How do you overcome imposter syndrome? I think for some folks, they don't ever overcome imposter syndrome. I still have like vicious imposter syndrome, and I've been doing this for a while. And I just don't think it goes away. I think you learn to manage it. I think you learn to realize that a lot of the skills you have do have value. And you just realize as you get further along in your development career that there's always something more to learn. And that's not a reflection of you or your intelligence or your ability. It's just a reflection of how vast this field is and how much time and commitment you have to go deeper on certain things. And so for me, I feel really confident in my ability to learn, right? I think that's where I get over imposter syndrome, is the ability that I know I can pick up stuff, I can learn. I've invested time in learning how to learn. So if there is something that is a roadblock that I have to learn that I don't know if I'm not good at it, I know and trust myself enough that I will get there eventually. And so I think really doubling down on learning how to learn has been the biggest impactor on me getting through my imposter syndrome at different phases of my career. Oh, I like that indifferent. I have imposter syndrome, but I don't stop it from letting me move forward. Cool. Next question. Where do I go for advice with offer negotiations? I made an offer for freelance work with a chance for full-time employment that will include web dev. When we get further along, we'll have like times and spaces for me to help you with negotiation. But for right now, I would send a mod mail, and I could probably help through mod mail. But negotiation is just get an offer, don't make any commitments in the moment. Think about what you want, counter. I like to counter on the phone, because that we can hear like the trepidation in their voice or not, and then hopefully get what you want. But we'll have lots of classes on negotiation, and so we actually do have some videos on YouTube about how to negotiate. So watch maybe some of our older how to get a job videos that'll show you the exact things I would just tell you when it comes to negotiation. Cool. Is it easier for a US citizen allowed to work in the US compared to someone that is not allowed living in Europe to find a job in the US while keep living there? Yeah. It's always going to be easier for folks that are from the US to get jobs in the US. Just the truth. Cool. How do you feel about using DevDocs as opposed to the MDN? It seems to contain an easier to digest user interface. It still provides hyperlinks to the MDN. That's up to you. I just like the MDN. I'm used to it. Makes my life easier. If there's something that makes your life easier, definitely do it. But I just like the MDN, so I don't use anything else besides it. How important are soft skills and how to develop them as a software engineer? Soft skills are what get you a job, right? So soft skills are what gets you a job. And soft skills are often what helps you keep a job or to move up in your field. People like to think of like software engineers as like nerdy, like loners that don't communicate well. No, that's not how software engineering works. Is that you're constantly communicating with a team. You're constantly communicating with folks that have business needs. And so it is a very soft skill heavy career, even if what you're doing day to day is purely technical. And so we'll spend a lot of time talking about soft skills. We'll talk a lot about how to win friends and influence people. We're going to talk about all these things that are going to help you stand out once you're on the job. But soft skills are super important, and probably one of the biggest things that helps separate 100 devs from other boot camps is our emphasis on the soft skills, the emphasis on the networking, the emphasis on the things that really do at the end of the day help you get a job. Because half of our folks that got jobs last cohort, they didn't even have technical interviews. It was the soft skills that got them the job. So definitely something we'll cover together. Dab says you're constantly communicating with the nerdy lunars. How good would you say your networking skills are? Next level, my friend. Next level. Is the focus mainly on the US market? No, we have folks. Our first like handful of jobs came from all over the world. People started getting jobs in Brazil and the UK before they started getting jobs in the US. Yeah. Do we need to install and learn Haml and Sash? You should know the basics from the reading, but I want to go too much deeper than that. Does coding get fun for you, or the more you do it, the more tedious it gets? I love having a hard problem and learning what I need to learn to solve that problem. So coding, I guess, can be tedious in certain aspects, but for me, it's always about solving harder and harder problems. And I think that's the joy of being a software engineer, and why I think it ranks so high on the happiness scales. is that like it is very satisfying to like grind out a ticket and at the end of the week like accomplish something, like you've built something. I feel like in a lot of other jobs you don't get that consistent payoff, right? A lot of times you're building up to something that can take months, whereas like code, it's like a day-to-day thing. Cool. What are your favorite blockchain influencers on Twitch? I don't really have any favorite blockchain folks. Nobody comes to mind. Cool. So this next question here. What would you say to someone who always starts learning new things but quickly gives up when things get a bit difficult? I think that's pretty common. That's why we don't have a lot of software engineers or as many software engineers as we need. I feel like that is a very common aspect of human nature, right? We don't want to do things that make us uncomfortable. And especially if you're an adult, you might not have the regulation to manage your frustration. We talked about that study that talked about people gaining fluency later in life. And it's just as adults, we don't manage our frustration well. And that is one of the biggest barriers to you being successful in learning how to code. And so, with someone that always starts new things and quickly gives up, you got to ask, what do you want out of life? Right? Barring any type of mental or intellectual strife or setback, right? Like barring those things, like taking those off the table, you got to figure out like what you want in life. Is it worth it for you to put in 20-30 weeks of your nights and weekends to get that goal at the end of it, right? And for some folks that trade-off is worth it, and for others it's not. And for some folks, they'll constantly chase the buck, right? I've had so many students that will be like, oh, I'm going to learn web dev, and then I'm going to learn cybersecurity, and then I'm going to learn Web3, and then I'm going to learn all these things that in goal of getting a job, where if they had just picked the first thing and stayed with it for 6 months, they would have a job. And so it's unfortunately something I see happen a lot. You have to make a decision at the end of the day. What do you want, and what are you going to do to get it, right? And yeah. On average, how many people drop off the 100 devs cohort? We don't know. We've only done it once. I think we kept about like a third of the folks that started. Yeah. The thing about it, keeping about a third is what I'm shooting for. If we can keep a third, I'll be happy. Because the beautiful thing about 100 devs is it's completely free, right? It's completely free. A lot of people can like dip their toes in, see if it's ready for them. But once you start assigning Shay Hal, once people start to see the real work that it takes, right? Once people start to see the real work that it takes, the real nights and weekends it's going to take, they're just not ready for that, right? And that's totally okay, right? That's totally okay. You can come to the first couple classes, have a lot of fun, but realize, you know what, Leon, the next 30 weeks of my life ain't set up that way. You know, they ain't set up that way, and that's okay. That's why I do what I do. I'd much rather you come, test the waters, and find out this is not for you than pay $20,000 to figure out it's not for you and then be out that money or be in a really hard spot trying to get that money back, right? And so it's not for everyone. Yeah, office hours is always less though. We're not at 2.4. If you look at the past couple classes, we're still hitting like 5K each class. So we've dropped about 1,000, 2,000 people from the first class. And then office hours is always like half the people. Yeah. But that's what I like. That's why I think that's why I do what I do, is like, if I want you to test the waters, and if it's the right experience for you, that's why we're here. And I think if people were like, I always say, give me at least a month. I think if people actually gave it a month and they could see what they could do at the end of the month, that would be the click they need to do it for longer, right? I think most people don't give themselves that month to see what they're able to do. But think about what you're able to do already. Like how, like you're building these simple layouts. You're taking like images and turning them into real code. And the end of next week, you'll be able to take like even more complicated images, turning them into even more complicated code. And that's like a month in. Like, to me, that's mind blowing. And I think if folks just gave themselves that month or two to like get in it, they would stay in it. But like the question asked, a lot of folks don't give themselves that month. They don't give themselves that grace for a month or two, and they always chase the next newest, hottest thing, and they never get anywhere. So even if web dev is not for you, even if this program is not for you, just pick something and stick with it for 3 months. At the end of the 3 months, you might still hate it and you'll move on to the next thing, but don't keep chasing the shiny objects. Pick something, invest 3 months into it, and then move on if you really need to. Life is short, but it's also kind of long. Shay House indicated on Twitter that they would like to join in on a class. Have you spoken to them about this? I haven't spoken to them yet. I got to respond to some stuff on Twitter, but yeah, they reached out to on Twitter, so I'll follow up with them. One of the things I deal a lot with is like executive functioning, and it's really hard for me to respond sometimes. It's just like a mental block thing for me. And so sometimes I get very overloaded and it's hard for me to respond in the moment. So I got to work up to that. It's part of that's like one of the weird side effects of my bipolar disorder. How do you type multiple lines of code at the same time on VS Code? You can hold down Command and click, right? You can hold down Command and click, or if you're on, at least on Mac, it's Command and Alt, and then you just use the down arrow, and you'll get your cursor at each line, and then you can just start typing. Pretty much it. That's how I do it. On Windows, it'll be a little bit different, slightly different commands. I live in a third world country where even senior developers only earn 10,000 per year. Is it possible to work remotely while earning salaries from NA EU? Is it possible? Yes. Is it way harder? Yes. You have to go above and beyond to get those jobs because there's so much competition. Were folks from last cohort successful at it? Yes, but it is a lot more work. You have to be perfect in every aspect of your game. You have to have an amazing, well-crafted story, an amazing portfolio. You have to be a beast at technical interview questions, and then you have to network your ass off. If you're not willing to do all of those things, it's going to be a really, really, really hard uphill battle. Do you prefer Mac over Windows? I prefer Macs for like day to day and Windows for gaming. No. Do modern sites and web apps normally use libraries for styling instead of pure CSS? It depends. I built some that are just pure CSS. I use libraries a lot for some projects. Depends on your team. What size laptop do you prefer? I actually always have like screens, and so my laptop size doesn't matter. I'm very, very rarely just on my laptop, but I always go for 13 inches. I don't like bigger machines. I also have an iPad as like my secondary screen, so if I'm traveling, I'll have like a 13-inch laptop and my iPad with me. That's enough. I know some folks hate being on 13s, but I like the portability more. Is there a place we can share our Anki cards? Use the ones that made by others. I know it's better to make my own, but I have a full-time job and a kid. Yeah, it's still, even if you have less time, it's still light years better to create your own cards. If you're using somebody else's cards, it just doesn't work the same. Even though it's the same material, that idea of active recall and connecting it to like the position where you actually learned it is the difference maker. And so even if you have minimal time, still try and eke out your own cards. It's going to be way better in the long run. It's just it just doesn't work when you share. No. Next question here. I don't want to work at Fang, but everybody seems to be in love with the idea. Is there something wrong with me? What's the obsession with Fang? I think for a lot of people, that's like, for them, maybe the ultimate validation that they're a software engineer. But it really does just come down to people selling courses. I really do believe that. At the end of the day, I think it's people selling courses and like YouTubers that like get that idea in most people's heads. And yeah, it's like saying you want to go to Harvard or Yale or something like that. Like, I get it, right? Like, it is good, like it is validation that you know what the heck you're doing, that like you should pay like that, and it will help you for the rest of your career, right? If you work at a FANG company for the rest of your career, it's easier to get interviews, it's easier to get jobs. And so that's why it's like the end all be all for a lot of folks. But it's also just a lot of people that have never actually coded professionally before. Like, they've never even had a job before, and like that's their goal. And to me, that's kind of wild. Get a good paying job where you can be happy and you can skill up, instead of trying to shoot for this. Like, it's like trying to learn baseball and going and saying you want to play for the Yankees. It's okay to have that dream, but you gotta put in some work to get to that dream. And will there be one person that has the genetic skills and the past experience to walk onto the Yankees having never played collegiate ball or high school ball? Yeah, sure. That'll happen once in a generation. But most of us would be better off learning the skills, getting a great paying job, getting paid to learn how to code for a year or two, and then putting in the elite code grind until our eyeballs fall out, and then going to Fang. But going from never having coded before straight to Fang, don't ever let me be the person that tells you that you can't do it. I will never say you can't do it. I'm just saying that there are way better, clearer paths to high paying, great jobs. And just because someone's trying to sell you a YouTube course doesn't mean you need to go down that path. When we find out what houses we're in, within like a week or so, yeah, we're having the study groups that are opening, the study communities that are opening, and then the houses will just be other communities that are opening as well. Are you a fire, earth, air, or water bender? I always thought water benders were like the best, mainly because of the blood bending. That just seems like super OP to me. Like, if you can blood bend, then it's kind of just over, right? Can you explain the viewport meta tag and what it does? We're going to see that this week when we get into responsiveness. But the viewport meta tag basically sets the ability for you to like pinch and zoom on a website. So if you set it to one value, then somebody can't pinch and zoom and make like the site bigger, which is actually like one of the most common things people that need some sort of assistance on the web do, right? Like, if you have a visual impairment that makes it harder to see, like pinching and zooming and like making things bigger is something that they need to have happen. And I've seen statistics where it's like upwards of like 10% of people will do that. And so if you set the viewport one way, it stops people from being able to do that. And so you don't ever want to do it. So we'll explain that in detail this week as we get into responsiveness. But it basically just helps you set the initial like viewport or size of the window and whether or not you can stretch it. What about Magic the Gathering favorite colors? I love burn deck, so I don't answer that. Cool. What salary would you recommend us up roughly aiming for after the course? I think the 70 to 80k range is like the goal where I tell most people to like shoot for. The 70 to 80 range, because there's so many people from so many different locations, right? In some areas, 70 to 80k is like peanuts, and then in some areas that's like that's like Ferrari money, right? It depends on where you are, right? And so that like 70 to 80 is like the I think the benchmark where like you found a decent job that's paying well, right? Some areas that's gonna be way higher, and some areas that's gonna be way lower. So really, it really is location dependent. But you saw a range on our alumni Twitter space. You saw kind of like an 80k roll, 100k roll, and 140k roll. There is no difference really in kind of their skill set or past experience. It's about kind of the opportunity that made the most sense for them, and kind of what they network to get towards, right? And so you're going to see that there's going to be a range of salaries that are out there, and it's kind of like, what do you want and what do you want to go after? Yeah. But that's a really hard question to answer because it's just so dependent on where you live. In the US, yeah, I don't think I would go below 70 unless there are some really strong value adds. Which is the 15 minutes of pain for the responsive homework? Is it the one layout that we did for 7 minutes in class? Yep, exactly. The one that we did 7 minutes in class. Or the 3 layouts we did for, no, the one we did in class that it literally says 15 minutes of pain above it. That's the layout that we're going for. We only spent 7 minutes because we were running out of time on it. But yeah, that's the layout. Will we cover having the right appearance for interviews? Yeah. It's not something I really worry about too much. As long as you're like, make sure your background is clear and you're not, yeah, that's about it. Like you can just wear a t-shirt to most interviews if you want. Especially most of them right now are remote, so you're not actually going into a business or anything like that. So looking presentable and having like a decent background, your bed's made, like that's about it. Cool. Is it okay to interview in your bedroom? Yeah, as long as it's clean and tidy and like well put together. I mean, ideally you would want to be like up against just like a blank wall if you don't have much space. But you gotta do what you gotta do. If you weren't a good developer at all at your previous jobs, how do you talk about your previous experience to still sell yourself in a good light? You just don't snitch on yourself. You just talk about the projects that you built and the things that you learned, and that's about it. Um, Most companies don't dig. They really just don't. So if you say, "Oh yeah, we worked on some really great projects. Here's the thing I built. Here's what I really enjoyed about the team and the projects," and then you just kind of move on. Most companies won't ever tell a future employer how well you did. I've done hundreds of reference calls, and there's only two questions I ever get asked: what are the dates of employment, and are they eligible for rehire? That's about it. They don't care about how you did on past projects or anything like that, because you can get into trouble if you like say the wrong thing in those calls. And so it really only comes down to those two questions, because anything else just opens you up to some liabilities. So yeah, just share what you want to share, and they will never know other than what you share with them. And so that's really big. A lot of people like go into interviews and they just like bare their soul. That's definitely not the move. You should have a very curated thing you're going to say for each company. That's only your wins, only your highlights. People go, Leon, should I be humble in interviews? Hell no. This is like the one time of your life to like talk about yourself in the most positive light, to share all of your wins, right? There's some finesse to it, but yeah, don't snitch on yourself. What would you say is the best thing we can focus on to get jobs in the US if we are out of the US? Give it to me straight, Chief. It's all about networking. It's all about having a champion at a company that loves you and wants to hire you over anybody else. That's it. All networking. If you're outside the US and you want a job in the US, it's going to come down to networking and having someone in your corner that's going to hire you over anyone else. If you want to come to the US, like you want to be on the H-1B visa, that takes a company saying, we, out of all the candidates we could have, we want this person. We're willing to sponsor them. We're willing to pay the legal costs to make that happen. And we're willing to go to a lottery and maybe not even get them. So there's no way you get that job unless you have someone that absolutely loves you and wants you to be in that company above anyone else. That's it. That's how you make it happen. How complex are the apps will be able to build after 100 devs? You pretty much be able to build any full stack web app you want to build. Now, how much time it'll take you to build them, that's kind of dependent, but you know, you'll be able to build pretty much whatever you want to build. I actually meant working for a US employer remotely. It's the same thing. Even working remotely is the same thing. It's the same thing. Please don't spam the same question like a bazillion times. Like, I see your question. I'm trying to answer it. In fact, the person that was spamming, I answered your question twice. So I'm just gonna time you out. If you ask the same question multiple times and you haven't gotten an answer, maybe stop. When it comes to big projects such as the $100 projects, how do you plan it out, or so you don't go too big? We're going to talk about like scope and scope creep, but you basically figure out what your MVP is, your minimum viable product. Like, what's the smallest thing that you could build that will help you prove your end goal? And so yeah, you build out an MVP first, and then as you have time, you add on to it. We haven't talked about networking yet, so we're going to talk about that next week. So you don't have to be good at it yet because we haven't had classes on it yet. Is the CS:GO server live? Technically, the server is live. You can play on it, but I hired someone to trick it out. So I hired someone on Fiverr to build out the whole server for us to have all the bells and I have like a huge list of stuff that I want to be on the CS:GO server, and so I'm hoping that they finish it this weekend, and then we'll probably do some practice rounds by this week or so. Yeah. What? Shellraiser, hey, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. That's wild. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. That's wild. Thank you for all the gifted subs. Hope you're doing well. Want to get the subs. Woo. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. I'm not very good with colors or very creative. Is front end web development for me, or should I focus on the back end? Um, you can be a front end web developer. Most front end web developers don't pick colors or creative. You work with a designer. And so if you're a front end developer, you're never really designing anything on your own. You're working with a designer or a user experience professional that like tells you what to do, and then you like do the thing that they told you to do. Maybe on like really small teams, it'll be up to you to figure out the UI. But in that case, you just use like a UI kit or something that does the design work for you. But yeah, front end developers really not designing; they're just implementing designs that are given to them. So yeah, it doesn't really matter about what you want to work on. Would you recommend Fiverr when we do our freelancing? Hell no. Do you feed your cat kale? I don't have a cat, and I was really interesting. I had no idea cats would eat salad like that. They're talking about the raid we did last class, I believe, where Danny was feeding their cat like their salad and they were eating it up. That was pretty funny. Yeah, she does really cool projects. Lots of like really neat little robotics projects, and so I was like, I watch her stream a lot just because it's always something cool. The robot they're working on is pretty neat. They've done some other ones in the past too that were pretty dope and very beginner friendly too. They use a lot of like off the shelf stuff that you can do too. How frequently does one switch companies as a software engineer? I think earlier in your career right now, it's pretty trendy to hop like every 2 years. Yeah, it's pretty wild right now. I see like every 2 to 3 years, people are jumping, and it's because it's very hard to get raises. Like if you're making, let's say you're making 80K and you want to jump to 100, it's often very hard for an employer to give you like a 20% raise. Like they just can't, they can never advocate for you enough to get a 20% raise. But you could very easily get that raise just by jumping to a new company that pays more. And so right now it's quite in vogue to jump every 2 to 3 years. I don't know if that'll die down as much or not, but right now people are jumping a lot. Is every year perceived as too much? It's not really. I think like a year minimum, and then it's up to you and the company and kind of where you feel like you're good at. Yeah. Is remote work position easier to get as your second job? Way easier to get remote roles for your second gig. Yeah. The remote roles for your first gig are always a little bit harder. But once you have some work history and some folks willing to speak on your behalf, remote becomes definitely way easier. Do I have a 3D printer? I do. I do have a 3D printer. What would be a good dollars per hour rate for sites like Upwork when we start freelancing? Don't use Upwork. Don't use Fiverr. Don't use any of those platforms to get freelancing gigs. Build your own network that you own and that you invest in, and where you're not competing down to the bottom for others. Also, I don't like people to work on an hourly rate. You ask your client how much money they have, and then you can deliver stuff at that price point. And so when we get to freelance, we're going to talk a lot about how I price projects. But I never give out an hourly rate. I never throw out a dollar amount until I know what their budget is. And so I could tell them, hey, I can build you a site for $100,000. I can build you a site for $1,000. It really does come down to your ballpark budget. What's your ballpark budget? Once I know your ballpark budget, I can tell you what I can get done at that price point. And so, yeah, throwing out hourly rates, competing to the bottom, not something that we'll advocate when we get to how to freelance. Will my current job let me do freelancing? I don't know. Depends on the contract you sign. Some companies don't allow it. Some companies don't care. Depends on what you signed. How should we document this boot camp on our resumes, LinkedIn? We'll get there. We're not there yet. We're gonna have plenty of templates for your resumes, plenty of guides for your LinkedIn. We're just not there yet. Is there a glitch template that is simply blank? I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't really use glitch all that often. I'm sure there is some way to set it up that's blank, but probably just creating a new file. But yeah, sorry, I'm not sure. I don't use glitch. Thoughts, feedback on Legend so far? I haven't started playing it yet. I've watched some other people play it. I've seen some of the leak stuff before it came actually out, but I need a larger block of time to sit down and digest it. Main series games, I the Midnight I'm playing, but this one, I don't know. It seems pretty cool, but it's just not the thing that I'm most excited about in Pokemon, and so I can wait a little bit. You feeling okay? Doing well? Doing pretty good. Yeah. Are preprocessors commonly used? Yeah, they're pretty common. They are pretty common. We won't really use too many. We won't really use them here in this course, mainly because when you join your team, they might use one as opposed to another, and so it's just not something that I've ever seen hold somebody get back from getting a job. So I don't spend time on it. But when you join a team, they might use one, they might not. How to get an internship when you're 30 or 40? Don't get an internship, get a job. How do you feel about live coding as an interview method? When you live code, I assume you can Google. Yeah, most times you can use whatever resources you would normally use. Some companies don't let you do it, but most do. I love live coding as an interview method because I can study for it. I find a lot of other stuff is really hard to study for. So yeah, I'm definitely in I think the minority there of like liking LeetCode style interviews. I think it's just way easier for my entry-level students to study that one very specific thing and do well at it, as opposed to having to be a beast at Node, React, JavaScript, and build something from scratch in the moment. I think that's way harder than the algorithmic problems that they could study day in and day out and be really prepared for. So I like it, but I think you have to be prepared for everything when it comes to interviewing. If we're getting caught up, is it more important to watch VOD classes or catch up on the homework and reading? I want you to do everything. Yeah, I don't think one thing is more important than the other. I want you to, they're complementary, right? Just doing the reading is not enough. Just watching the videos is not enough. You really need to do both in tandem. And so it might take you a while, but definitely work through all the material. All right, I think we're gonna do a few more questions here. And then we will do our lovely raid, and then the day will be yours. Let's get through a few more questions here. Can you go over ClearFix with an example? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it. So we kind of talked about this last one already. We can do it again, but the idea is that if you have a container that does not have a height, it grows when you put stuff inside of it, right? And so if you were to then take the stuff out of that container, it would collapse, right? And so all ClearFix does is says, hey, if you put stuff inside and then you float that stuff, it doesn't collapse on itself, right? That's all it's saying, right? All ClearFix does is stop that from collapsing. So we can take a peek at that. Let me make a template here. All right, let's try this out. All right, so let's put these sections inside of a section. or let's put them inside of a main just for now. All right, so our main opens and closes. Look at a little Leon here. Rivia, hey, thank you for the Madeline and Rivia. Thank you for the 5 gifted subs. I appreciate that. Thank you for being here. All right, so let's go ahead and put these 3 sections inside of the main. All right, so let's save this and let's see what this looks like. Let's give main a border here though. Let's do main. And let's go ahead and give it a border that is 5 pixels, solid red. Cool. And let's go ahead and open this in the browser. Oop, wrong browser. Open this in the browser. There you go. So right now, we can see that main. See main right now. Does main wrap around those sections? Like it should be wrapping around all 3 of these sections, right? Is it wrapping around those 3 sections or not, chat? Nope. We can see that it kind of collapsed on itself. Like we can see that the 10 pixels of border there, but it's collapsed on itself. So let's go and do something here. Let's go ahead and give this main the class of clearfix. Cool. There we go. We can see that it's no longer collapsing, right? We can see that this main is no longer collapsing. You can see that it goes all the way around, right? And so what stopped the main from collapsing was that we put the clearfix class on it. Now, the reason why main collapsed in the beginning, right? The reason why main collapsed in the beginning was that all 3 of these sections were floating and there was no height on the main, right? We can see main has no height. So what happened is main starts collapsed. We put those 3 sections inside of it and main wrapped around those 3 sections. But as soon as we floated those 3 sections, boop, it collapsed again because there was no height on it. It was getting its height from the stuff that was inside. As soon as you floated that, it collapsed, right? And so when we put the clearfix class on main, what we're doing is if we look at the clearfix class, it's saying put a dot, right? Put a little dot that's invisible, right? And put it after the content, right? And so what it's doing is it's literally putting like a little invisible dot, like right here. And it's telling that main area, wrap around that dot. Even if there's stuff floating, even if stuff is missing, don't collapse, wrap around that dot. And that's what clearfix is doing. It's just telling it to wrap around the dot. No matter what happens inside of that main element, no matter if stuff is floating, if it disappears, it's gonna stay wrapped around those 3 sections. Yeah. Cool. And the reason why they were somebody said, why are these floating? Is because they needed to sit next to each other. Yep. Cool. Alrighty. We could also have done this, right? Like if we look, we know that the sections have a height of 300 pixels. So we could have also just done like height 600 pixels, right? That would have done the exact same thing, because then no matter what happened to the stuff inside, it still had height. But we don't know how much stuff is going to stack on top of each other. We don't know if that 600 will always be 600, especially when we're on mobile. So we don't use fixed heights. We can use that clearfix hack if we need to. Yeah, it wouldn't help us when it comes to responsiveness. Cool. Let's go do a few more questions here. How do you identify a font from a photo? There are like services where you can like upload the photo and it like guesses the font for you. I think What the Font is what it's called. But a lot of times I'll use a plugin. If it's a hosted site, I'll use a plugin like What Font that'll tell me the font on the hosted site. If not, my designer will tell me. So like going forward, as we get into like bigger stuff, I'll just give you the fonts. If our 100 hours project includes users, do we need to have real live public users? No, you can do what we call seeding, where it just looks like you have them even if you don't have them. Many freelancing jobs I've seen require a portfolio and years of experience. What is the best way of obtaining a freelancing job despite lack of connections? Networking. You got to start networking. You got to start building those connections. Yeah. You got to start building those connections, and over time you'll get better at it, and you'll have more folks. All right. Let's go ahead here and do one or two more, and then we're gonna do our raid. One or two more, and we'll do our raid. Okay, folks. You always wanna do the raid because you get more channel points. All right. Jay-Z or Kanye? Woo! Jay-Z. I thought that would be hard, but Jay-Z just kind of came quickly. I love them both, but if I had to pick one, it's me and one person on an island. Trust Jay-Z to get us back home. A lot of these are about stuff we kind of already talked about. We kind of answered a lot of these already. Any homework for Tuesday? No, there's nothing that's due Tuesday. You should be getting in your reading though. Definitely be getting in your reading, but nothing specifically due for Tuesday. Yeah, nothing specifically due for Tuesday, but hopefully you get your reading in, and yeah. All right, folks. Let's go back to, I'm not seeing any too many folks that are like super live right now. Lana just went off too. Lana just went off. Maybe go back to Juicebox. All right, yeah, I think we're gonna go back to Juicebox for the raid. So let's go ahead and queue up for the raid. Cool. All right, folks, it's been a wonderful Sunday. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out. Hopefully got through some of your deeper questions, and really looking forward to this upcoming week. Lots of fun responsiveness to get into. It's gonna be a lot of fun work. We're gonna be building some really cool sites. But have a good rest of your weekend. Have an amazing Monday, and I will see you all on Tuesday for class. Now let's go ahead and raid. See y'all over there. Peace, everybody. Peace.